Today we're going to take a look at how to get started mixing immersive audio, Dolby Atmos inside of Pro Tools. So as you've heard from people like Alan, there's a lot you can do with the music. There's a lot you can do with films, such as the projects that Scott's been working on. So we're going to take a look at solutions for immersive audio inside of Pro Tools. So, of course, the hardware is where we're going to start here. And the hardware that we're using here today, key code, is the Pro Tools Matrix Studio. And the Matrix Studio is a fantastic interface that lets you take your outputs and send audio to all of these speakers that you see here. So we have this 7.1.4 Genelec system here at Keycode today, and all of that analog audio is being fed from the Pro Tools Matrix Studio. So there's a couple different ways that you could actually hook up your computer, whether it's a laptop like we have here, or a Mac Studio, or a Mac Pro, to the Matrix family. So the first way is Matrix Studio and Thunderbolt 3, and that's exactly what we have going on here. Thunderbolt 3 is a really fast and easy way to be able to connect to your interface. It is simply leveraging the core audio via Thunderbolt, and using the Matrix Studio, you get 64 channels of bidirectional audio. So you have a plenty channel count to be able to do all of your Atmos configurations, including your re-renders. So with Pro Tools Studio 2024.6 and the internal Dolby Atmos renderer, you could actually be mixing up to 7.1.4 using all of the analog outputs on the Matrix Studio. So you have the Matrix Studio with a Thunderbolt 3 option card. You're able to do your binaural headphone monitoring, both Apple and Dolby. You're able to use the Matrix Studio to calibrate the room. And we were talking about how that's so important earlier today in the Dolby presentation, to be able to ensure that your mix will translate across systems, to be able to calibrate your room and ensure that what you're listening to out of your monitors is truly what you're processing in Pro Tools. So you can use the Matrix Studio, the built-in SPQ card, to be able to tune all of your outputs. You can also use our free Avid Control app to put on an iPad to actually have some hands-on control of both monitoring, but also using the touchscreen to be able to pan things around in a three-dimensional space. We can use Pro Tools Studio to be able to have our live loudness monitoring, and now unlimited re-renders. So all of that is built into Pro Tools with the internal Dolby Atmos renderer. Now let's look at a slightly more advanced system. We're still going to use the Matrix Studio as our main interface, but now we can incorporate an HDX card. And that HDX card is going to open up possibilities for DSP. So we have the ability to have some plug-in processing power using the DSP with onboard the HDX PCIe card. But we can also have a larger format now because we can use Pro Tools Ultimate. So using an HDX system allows you to take the full capabilities of Pro Tools using Pro Tools Ultimate, and you're able to use the internal Dolby Atmos renderer to mix 916. And this 916 format is a new update in 2024.6 that allows you to take control of the full capabilities of Dolby Atmos. So here we have a Matrix Studio connected to an HDX card. We can see a Mac Studio here as our host computer. We also have an S1 and a dock, and this is going to give us some hands-on tactile control with actual faders on a Yukon network that we can connect to Pro Tools. So adding these control surfaces allows you to actually spill out some of your pan controls across the faders, and you can actually lift objects up in the air using your fingers magically on the S1 to write that automation. So our second option here is the Matrix Studio with a single HDX card. Now, if we're looking at building an even larger system for mixing Dolby Atmos, we could take a look at incorporating a Matrix 2 with multiple HDX cards and a larger control surface such as the Avid S4 or Avid S6. Now, using a Matrix with HDX cards allows you to use Pro Tools Ultimate. It allows you to use either the internal Dolby Atmos renderer that is now native inside of Pro Tools 2024.6, or you can also interface with the dedicated Dolby Atmos renderer. Now, you can interface with that external renderer on the same machine or on a separate machine. Now, you can do that a few different ways. You can use Thunderbolt, or you can use Dante or even Maddie to connect to a separate machine to connect to that external renderer. So we have a Matrix 2 connected with an expanded HDX engine, meaning more than one card. We are still able to pull out our binaural headphone monitoring, both Apple and Dolby. We can calibrate our sound system using the built-in SPQ card of the Matrix 2, but now we have a much larger control surface using an Avid S4 or an Avid S6 to really build a custom mixing profile. So let's take a look at what's new in the internal Dolby Atmos renderer in Pro Tools 2024.6. So the biggest update here is new monitoring and re-render formats. So now you can do a 7.1.2 format. You can also do a 9.1.4 in Pro Tools Ultimate. But we also have something very cool, Stereo Direct, 2.0 Direct. And we are going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but this is a fantastic new feature that brings a true stereo mix based off of the immersive mix right to the creatives. Now, we also have brand new object view groups and binaural modes, and we can see that on the actual track, both in the edit and mix window. And we'll jump into Pro Tools later and take a look at where exactly that is. We can also assign groups directly from the track, which you can do while the transport's running, so you can create these dynamic mixes while you're actually playing back and mixing in real time. What else is new? We can access all these features by this little gear icon that's in the Dolby Atmos window. So again, we're going to open that up in Pro Tools and see where all of this lives, but you can see we can take a look at our headphone re-renders. We have our loudness re-renders. We have our custom re-renders. We can jump to our I/O setup. We have trim and downmix settings, and we can access our groups. And all of that is conveniently located in one single page, all things Dolby Atmos in the Dolby Atmos settings window. Something that's also new in 2024.6 is the ability to solo and mute Dolby Atmos groups. So you can actually assign your effects, your music, your Foley, your backgrounds, your dialogue, and you can solo them out. And using these groups, I'm going to show you something very cool later on. Earlier in the panel, we talked about making stems. Making stems has been a little difficult in Dolby Atmos. Well, now making stems, making a music and effects export is very easy, and we can do all of that with the built-in Dolby Atmos renderer inside of Pro Tools. We have these new monitoring and re-render formats. So the Stereo Direct, let's talk about it. Traditionally, the stereo re-render was a down mix based off of the 5.1 down mix. The Direct is now derived from the full Atmos presentation without that intermediate process. So it's a much clearer, more accurate description of that true Atmos mix. And that is now built in both as a live re-render and an offline re-render inside of Pro Tools. We can change our binaural modes either in the Dolby Atmos setup window or directly from the track, and we can do that live while the transport is playing, so you can actually hear those changes in real time. How do you get Dolby Atmos out of your speakers? It's very simple. You create one monitor path. The monitor path that is your Dolby Atmos setup in your room. In this case, it's 7.1.4. And from that, you're able to choose all of the derivative formats directly from the internal Dolby Atmos renderer. So in this room, we have 7.1.4. Once we open up Pro Tools, we're going to be able to see that we can play 7.1, 7.1.2, 5.1.4, 5.1, stereo, stereo direct, and even binaural. The integrated Dolby Atmos renderer carries a lot of the features that you're used to from the external renderer, such as multiple views. You have your theatrical view, you have your floating head person view, but we also have our meters here, and we can change those meters from your film meters or your Dolby meters. As we've mentioned before, there's a lot of plugins that are compatible with this Dolby Atmos format. Here you can just see a quick glimpse of many of them that were named earlier: Cinematic Rooms, Fab Filter. We have a few sound particle plugins as well, Lustrous Plates. So all of these plugin manufacturers are now developing their products to integrate directly with this new format, which of course you can put on all of your tracks inside of Pro Tools. And one of the last new very cool features of Pro Tools 2024.6 is the ability to bounce, commit, and freeze Dolby Atmos immersive with tracks. So you can actually take live re-renders and freeze or commit them. So this allows you to put on plugin processing, such as a limiter or any type of equalization, to actually process that stem that you create from your re-renders for delivery. So let's jump into Pro Tools and see where all of this lives. So here we are in Pro Tools, and if you want to get started very quickly with Dolby Atmos in Pro Tools, we are going to go to our dashboard. When you open up Pro Tools, you'll get this window here. This is the dashboard. If you come over to Getting Started, and you come down here, and it's the last little box in the center of this window, it says Dolby Atmos Guided Tour. It says Open Dolby Atmos Demo. And if you open up that demo, this is the session that's going to come up. This is a Dolby Atmos music session created by Matt Lang. And inside of here, if we collapse all of these folders, we can see that we have different food groups in here. And we're going to see how we can use groups to make navigating this session a little bit easier. But let's play back this session to see what we have. So here's our internal renderer. And as you can see, we're monitoring in 7.1.4. Great, so let's dive into the Dolby Atmos panel right here. So the way you can open this up is you come over here to Window. You come all the way down to the bottom and you see Dolby Atmos Renderer. Now, if you don't see this enabled, it'll ask you, do you want to enable the Dolby Atmos Renderer? Yes, and this is what will pop up. Now, we can access the I/O setup from this page. The first thing that you need to do to be able to get started mixing Dolby Atmos is you need to configure your monitor path. So if we go to output over here, we can see that we have two monitor paths. We have a 7.1.4 output, and we have this binaural output. And that 714 output is our main monitor path over here. Because we set that as our main monitor path, we're able to see 714 as an option inside of the renderer to be the maximum format. And if I play back this session, let's jump to the middle here. I can immediately fold it down to stereo. I still see all of my immersive panning, but I can go from stereo to 5.1, 7.1, and right back up to 714. So all of that is built inside of Pro Tools. You don't have to interface with any external monitor controller. It can all be done by this monitor dropdown right here. So let's take a look on the left side at all these different dropdowns that are available. So we have headphone re-renders. So you can disable it, you can use binaural, you can listen to the stereo direct, or you can listen to the stereo fold down. Right now we're listening to the binaural, and that's what we've been outputting to the stream. Now, below our headphone re-renders, we have our loudness re-render. Depending on how you want to monitor, you could put a meter on the stereo direct, or more traditionally, you can use the 5.1. So where does this go? If we take a look down here in this session, on the left side, we have headphones, and we have loudness. And this headphone input is this headphone selection here. So changing binaural to stereo changes the feed here, and we simply send it to an output. In this case, if we go to the I/O setup, we go to outputs, we have binaural. It's going out 13 and 14 via our, if we look at the playback engine, Matrix Studio. And so it's simply coming out of Pro Tools Thunderbolt on channels 13 and 14. And that is our binaural rendering. If we take a look at loudness, we have 5.1 here, we have loudness over here. If I change loudness to stereo direct, it no longer comes up in this loudness pane. It's not the same width. We have loudness, we can put a plugin on that, and we can monitor our loudness. Now, where it gets really exciting is custom re-renders and groups. But before we get to the really exciting part, let's briefly talk about trim and down mix. Trim and down mix can be set here in this window. You can have multiple presets, so you can save presets and recall them. What I like about trim and down mix is that if someone is sharing a session with you and their trim and down mix sessions saved to that session do not match your previous trim and down mix sessions on your Pro Tools system, this will turn orange and say, hey, I have different settings applied. Do you want to use these new settings, or do you want to revert to your old settings? And so this trim and down mix will turn orange, this small gear will turn orange, and that is Pro Tools telling you, hey, check your trim and down mix to make sure these are the settings that you want to use. Now, the cool stuff. Custom re-renders. It makes sense to talk about groups before custom re-renders. Groups. We open this up, and what do we see? Manage bed and object groups. So, shipping with Pro Tools, we have our traditional dialogue, music, effects, and narration. You can make any type of group that you want. So, say we want to make drums. Say we want to make woodwinds. Say we want to make background vocals, lead vocals, any number of things. Guitars, synths. Now we have all of these groups. Not only do you have these groups, but we can color code them. We can hit OK. Now, if we go over and take a look at our tracks, we'll close this Dolby Atmos pane here. Okay, we have all these leads. Now, here in this window, we can see our inputs. We can see the outputs. These are going to beds here. It's an object. We can see our binaural mode, and we can actually change this directly inside of the mix window here. We can turn it off, near, mid, far. These are all mid. But below that, we can set our group. So we could make these all lead. So now these are all lead vox. We have these ambients here. We could make these background. If we take off groups, now if we go back into the Dolby Atmos renderer, we can actually see these groups up here. We can solo them, we can mute them. But if we go to the custom re-renders, we can actually make a custom re-render or offline render of any flavor we want using these groups. So we can say, I want it to be live and actually bring it back into Pro Tools to either re-record live inside of Pro Tools or simply use it to monitor on a bus, such as the 5.1 loudness re-render. But we can take this and we can name it M&E. We can choose any type of path we'd like here, any type of width we'd like. We can even do something that's larger than what the session is. But say we want to keep it consistent, we want 714. Custom. We can actually choose what we put in here. We can say, I only want the beds, I only want the objects, or I only want specific groups. So if we're doing music and effects, maybe I only want the music and effects. I want all the beds and all the objects. Maybe I just want the beds. So I can do music and effects bed, M&E bed, M&E objects, we can designate the format. We can hit OK, we can save that, and now when we go to bounce our mix, we can choose Dolby Atmos. We can create those re-renders, and you can actually choose which ones you want, and you can output all of them in a single pass. So this is a really great way to be able to create stems, to work in Dolby Atmos really from even the conception of a project, right? Just like Alan and Scott were talking about earlier, hey, it's going to start in the recording process, and I want to place these microphones here, and I'm going to build this Dolby Atmos template inside of Pro Tools whether I receive all of these multiple microphones or not. Maybe I'm just receiving a traditional stereo mix, right? And you decide that you want to break it out later. You can do that inside of Pro Tools. And if you're building with the internal Dolby Atmos renderer, even only using it to pan music, pan objects, pan sound effects spatially, but still render in a stereo format, you can use these groups and these custom re-renders to export those different stems automatically. You don't have to go back and reconfigure your mix. You can actually just tweak everything that you've done up until that point. You can save it. You can save different presets of re-renders, and it allows you to quickly and easily take your project outside of Pro Tools to be able to publish it into the real world.
Thanks for watching Broadcast to Post. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast to receive future episodes. Follow Keycode Media on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to receive news on additional AV, broadcast, and post-production technology content. See you next time, folks.